The first thing that went wrong was the escalator missing a step, but continuing anyway, like a throat clearing between apologies. The rubber handrail tugged at my palm. The skylight above, previously smeared with normal rain, stretched into a black ceiling that looked like a star chart someone had erased with the heel of their hand. The crowd noise drained away as neatly as a plug pulled from a public fountain. What replaced it wasn't silence. It was a big, patient hum, the kind you only hear in places that plan to outlive you. I stepped off into the same floor I had started on. A mall? 3 stories? Maybe, if stories still meant height here. Everything had been left on, but nothing was alive. The tile underfoot held the day inside its residual heat, a scuffed map of a holiday season that never ended. The air smelled like cinnamon that had been boiled too long, butter that forgot to be honest, sugar burnt a little on purpose. The music, if you could call it, that was retail jazz put through a slow machine until the saxophone moaned into static. Skylights were pitch, as if they led to a different interior instead of outside. The fountain in the atrium was the color of no decisions. Its coins were the wrong shape. Kiosks waited like polite ambushes. Potted ficus trees were dust that had learned the trick of pretending to be leaves. It took me a full minute to notice the mannequins had turned their heads. Sporting goods for lingerie. All those faceless white ovals oriented toward the corridor, toward me, as if listening. Their hands were posed around nothing, a frozen grammar of showing. You can tell yourself the heads always point out display, angles, sight. You can tell yourself anything until the mall asks whether you're sure. Somewhere a boot scraped tile, not mine. I ducked into the nearest store, a children's toy place where the walls were a marching band of primaries, and the ceiling had cloud decals faded to the color of excuses. Dolls lined the shelves. Every one of them had eyes, but the eyes had been painted over with a matte black that drank my headlamp and refused to give it back. I crouched behind a low shelf of board games with names that tasted more familiar than true. The scrape came again, closer now. The mannequins at the entrance tilted a fraction, heads leaning to hear better, bodies bending a degree, toward the hallway like sunflowers toward something that wasn't the sun. The steps weren't a rhythm that suggested ankles. They were careful in the particular way of something very tall, trying not to announce it. A drag between taps like a long limb being asked to cooperate with a floor built for people. The scrape paused at the threshold. I held my breath and tried to remember how to take one quietly later. In the reflection of the front window, I saw nothing. No, not nothing. I saw the idea of a person, stretched and smudged, too thin where thin doesn't belong, too long where the body is supposed to accept limits. No face, an agreement where a face should be. It moved on. I counted to 30 in a language my brain invented on the spot and eased out. The mall had shifted by half an inch while I hid. Directories, the glass map slabs with the "You Are Here" dot, had been rearranged closer or farther. I couldn't say. The red dot bloomed where my fingertip touched the glass, like a wound widening to meet pressure. I looked for a store I recognized. The map obliged by offering 3 of them, none where they had been. Okay? I told nobody. The word fogged, and then didn't. I tested rules. Escalators. They ran, hummed, invited. Up took me up and delivered me to the floor I'd started on, but flipped. The directory was mirrored, letters backwards. My left shoulder now my right, and the windows gleam. Down did the same, only slower, as if insisting I take time to learn the lesson. Elevators existed, lighted lobbies, silver doors that loved themselves. But when I pressed a button, it glowed and stayed glowing, as if the elevator had already arrived where I was and could not take me anywhere else. Exit doors had bars made for hands. The bars depressed with a responsible clunk. The doors did not open. From the seam between them I felt air, cool and vast, the kind you only get from weather. I put my mouth to the seam like a child and tasted rain from a long time ago. The seam didn't widen. I pressed my cheek to the glass, and the glass pressed back. Exactly as much pressure as I gave it, like a mirror's idea of kindness. The first directory message changed while I watched. "Welcome to Silver Pines Galleria," it read. Then my name, then, closing in _. The blank pulsed. No numbers arrived. I stuck 2 corridors with long sightlines. The ones with glossy tile reflected the skylight pitch and made me feel like I was walking across a held breath. The ones with carpet brown, industrial, the texture of apology-swallowed footsteps. Mine and not mine. I avoided mirrors. You cannot, in a mall. Polished chrome is a mirror. Display glass is a mirror. The pretense of water in the fountain is a mirror. The back of a dead TV in an electronics store is a mirror in the way a window at night is. The scrape again. A soft, impatient tap, tap tap like fingers on a counter. Only lower, learned wrong, extended. Not keeping time with the music, keeping time with me. I walked like a person pretending not to run. Mannequins leaned another degree as I passed, listening to the same thing I did. Their fingers twitched sometimes, but only in the corner of my eye, the way light flickers in a peripheral wish. The food court smelled like cheerfulness left in the sun. Fries, pretzels, a flat chemical lemon from a mop. Counters were clean, appliances gleamed, and every register was open to a receipt with the first line already printed. "Thank you for your purchase." Waiting for a noun. Tables stood with chairs pulled out, as if invisible people had just pushed them back with thighs to stand and stretch and see about dessert. The carousel turned. The mirrors on its center column showed me a me that was fractionally late, and in the frame just behind that late me, something tall just past the nearest pillar made the idea of a motion so slow my muscles ached watching it. I took a tray and used it as a shield against the reflection in the glass of the pretzel counter. It made me feel 6 years old and made of tin. I circled wide around the carousel and kept it in my sight, because I could not bear not to, and because the whole mall is a funnel disguised as a plaza. There are clocks, big ones, decorative, with Roman numerals that misremember V and I. All of them say 10 past 11. Sometimes the minute hand slides 12 minutes forward and then, embarrassed, returns. I slept poorly on the bench nearest a dead fountain. That is, I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep until the hum changed key, and the tile decided to borrow heat from me instead of lending it. While I tried to belong to stillness, the scrape approached and slowed. The mannequins in the window of the candle store across from me, aligned like compass needles. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't breathe. My eyelids remembered being children, fragile as a soap film. The scrape stopped just past my shoes. I smelled water that had never been rain, and the faint iron of tongues bitten and not bled. It went away. It always went away, at least at first. The worst part wasn't being hunted. It was the generosity of a hunter that knew I could not leave. I tried the loading dock. Receiving. The signs had that OSHA tone that makes you feel both scolded and cared for. Safety is everyone's job. The hallway to the back was narrower than the front corridors. Painted cinder block fire doors with push bars and little wired glass windows. The windows looked out on a parking lot that might have been an ocean. Vans sat with their noses against the bumpers, backs yawning. I pressed my face to the wire glass. Far in the lot, a light flickered, correcting itself. The door said alarm will sound. I pushed the bar. The alarm did. The door did not open. The alarm kept crying like a machine that has always wanted to be a throat. When I let go, the sound stopped politely, and the door smiled its painted stencils at me. I drank from a bubbler. It tasted like a penny rolled in a freezer burn. It did not make me less thirsty. Sucking coins probably would have felt more honest. When I looked back at the glossy strip under the bubbler's basin, the monster was there, a smear as tall as a streetlight, its head tilted. My headlamp flashed. The smear's headlamp flashed. I touched the glass. It touched its glass. We were both on the wrong side. I started keeping notes in the margins of receipts. The registers in a few places would cough out inches of blank paper if I walked past, as if someone had voided a transaction a decade long. On those, I wrote rules with a pen stolen from an insurance kiosk. Rules made me feel like someone might be spared by them, even if nobody else would ever read them. Don't ride the escalators twice in a row. Don't turn toward footsteps. Don't eat. Smell is free and forgives. Don't step on glossy tile when you can help it. It makes you longer. The mirrors are doors for it, but only windows for you. If you see yourself smile in glass, keep walking. That expression isn't yours. I taped one of the receipts to a directory with chewing gum from a vending machine I didn't put money into. When I came back through the atrium an hour later, the gum was gone. The receipt had been replaced by a sale flyer, 50% off returns. It didn't speak to me, not the way a person does. It moved them all around me, set traps the way a weather system does, indifferent, thorough. Once, in a department store, I ducked into fitting rooms to hide, choosing a stall as a sacrament. I chose the third from the end because that's where I always go in airports. I latched it with the broken latch, the latch that tells your hands this is private, while telling the corridor this is yours. Footsteps entered, not mine, not rhythmic. The mirrors in my stall pretended to be helpful. They showed the stall door, and the stall door showed the mirrors, and that infinite Hall of Mirrors trick didn't trick, because, in the 5th or 7th recursion, the stall door was open, and I was not in it. And the tall blur had one long finger laid alongside a place where a mouth would have been, and a printed sign on the back of that door, in that further mirror read, "Please, try another size." The stall door here stayed closed. The handwriting on the sign behind mine read, "You look great," in letters nobody had written. I learned which corners it preferred. Any place with a display of mirrors, you shouldn't buy. Sunglasses stores, obviously. Shoe stores, with chrome walls. A pool of water that wasn't water. A set of polished granite columns in a bank kiosk were the worst. In those it could occupy 4 edges of me at once and watch my spine discover new names for fear. Sometimes the skylights dumped a cold blue light into the mall, and the whole place looked like it wanted to tell truth. Sometimes the blue cut out in a polite cough, and every store rose to the task of illuminated night clean, fluorescent, the color of a refrigerator that's too full of light to have room for food. I tried to leave dozens of times. Through the front doors, the mall's main mouth. Through the loading dock, the back teeth. Through a seasonal shop set up like a cabin, sap smell as honest as a lie can be. Exit sign glowing green above a door that opened onto a painted forest long as a parking lot. Through a staff corridor with a map. I followed like a pilgrim until the map became a directory and the directory became a sale sign for my own name. The mall invited me to believe the outside still existed. The posters in the windows showed weather. Coats with snow, dresses with wind, sandals with ocean. You look long enough, and the water moves. That's not a trick of televisions. It's the hum slipping a weight into your head. I kept walking when the sand mimed in the corner of my eye. I kept walking when a beach smell pressed my lungs like hands. I kept walking. It could wait. It did. It took its time coming close. It didn't need to hurry. It knew where the exits were, and it knew I would not reach them. I wanted to break glass. I had dreams about it, even while awake. I imagined a fire extinguisher used for honesty, a chair swung properly, a punch that sacrifices a knuckle to buy sky. The glass in stores here has the give of a decision made too late. I hit a display with both hands wrapped in a sweater. The glass rippled. The sweater unraveled. My hands were uncut. The glass kept my fingerprints like frost. At the far end of the wing that the directory called Maple Promenade. It installed a House of Mirrors exhibit for a children's museum that had never lived here. You could tell it was new because the taped-off hazard line around it was still clean. The mirrors were set at angles that made laughter hurt, even back in the day when laughter could stand in line. I went around. The path went around with me. When I eventually looked up at the skylight above that wing, the reflection of the mirror twisted receding was all it showed, made of black and suggestion. I started losing time, or time started refusing to be found. I slept in 10-minute hatreds between kiosks and woke to find I had been moved a store's length without walking. I ate nothing. Once, I chewed a cinnamon pretzel I did not remember taking, and it was packing foam hot with the memory of butter. I put it in a trash can that said thank you in the font of restaurants that died can by can by can. And when I walked by later, the can said you're welcome and was empty. My body didn't fail fast the way it should have. That's the mall's worst kindness after heat. It keeps you going the way a dream keeps your legs moving, even though they do not belong to a body. My heart complained about stairs, then didn't. My breath forgot how to fog. The blister on my heel practiced being a circle forever. The monster stalked properly now, confident that my experiments were a show put on for nobody. I would sit, careful as a crime, on a padded bench near a store that sold only belts. I would count 30 hums. It would stand in the reflection of the belt buckles and swear it wasn't listening. It would tilt its long head toward a directory, as if asking politely where I had taken the last turn. It would tap the glass with a long nail. Tap, 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 pause. The sound walked up my throat from underneath. I carelessly looked right once shoulder-high poster, framed, promoting a brand that believed its own name. In that clean, gloss black space I saw my back, and beyond my back, at the edge of the frame. The blur of face leaned very slightly, as if peering over my shoulder to see what I found so interesting. Its shoulder did not meet its chest in a way anybody would sign off on. Its arms were the wrong length, if hands are meant for anything other than reaching. When I whipped around, there was only a poster. The blur in the glass took half a second longer to decide it wasn't. I got clever. That's a sin here. I tried smearing the reflective surfaces with the gray paste found under benches, where gum goes to be remembered. I made handprints, streaks, the word no in letters that looked like denial practicing a signature. It worked for a corridor, then for a footpath. Then the mall introduced a freshly buffed stretch of polished granite and set a sail rack along it to make me step on the mirror I had sworn not to. And there it was again, in 12 little rectangles in the rack's chrome. The most dangerous places were the open ones, J-trims poured glass windows that tried to look like outside. But the most surprising danger was in the little too-bright niche between lingerie and cookware, where a pillar was clad in mirror tile, no bigger than a postcard. The blur could be in every tile. An array of skull shapes without skulls. A jewelry of wrong. It never appeared directly. Not once, not in air. Even when it brushed against a rack hangers, shuddering, silk shivering shy, could only see the proof in surfaces. It needed the mall to reflect it. Or it was the mall reflected. I thought that sentence and made myself throw it away like bad meat. I learned the rhythm of closing. The hum dropped a minor third. The skylights blackened inside their black. Somewhere a roll-down grill rattled one, then another, as if someone backstage were testing the chains. The music stopped, not in a pause, but in a completed decision. My breath made more noise. Every mannequin in sight, every mannequin everywhere, I think turned their heads by exactly the same degree toward the direction of the footsteps. The PA clicked. It played a tone. My name would have fit in the next space, and it didn't, only because the mall preferred a smaller cruelty. Dear shopper, please proceed to and. Then the speakers hissed a little chuckle, and the sentence stopped, because there was nowhere to proceed that wasn't more of the same. When closing finished, the mall started opening again without going through the polite intermission of night. No done. No grace. The carousel would spin. The saxophone would weep. The fountain would cough. My throat would make a sound like a question, and the mall would decide it meant go on. On what I will call the last day, because I am tired of measuring, I reached the parking lot. Or rather, I reached a parking lot, because parking lots are what the mall uses to whisper outside, to keep you interesting. You get there by walking through a shop with a display of tents and kayaks, and cheerful signage promising trips your budget can pretend to afford. You push through a glass door labeled "Emergency Exit Alarm will sound." The alarm does sound, long in the way a siren gets when it forgets why it started. You step out into a concrete apron, and then into a sea of paint lines and light poles. The lot goes on until the black, unblinking of the skylight breaks it. The ceiling hangs low enough to tell the truth. There is no sky, but for a slice of walk you can pretend. The air isn't fresher, but it has the taste of distance. I stood between two SUVs, long enough to make myself an illusion of privacy. The SUVs had dealer stickers for places that never existed. Their windows were dark enough to keep secrets. In the rear quarter panel of one, I saw the blur leaning with me. It had its palm on glass. I had my palm on glass. Its fingers were longer. The print it left from the other side was exact. Mine was sweat. There are no alarms in the lot. The hum extends. It doesn't have to be careful here. It knows I will come back in. My hunger is a rope that loops around the carousel and tugs. My thirst is a floor drain in the bathroom. I do not enter. I went back in. I walked hard and long through 2 anchor stores and 6 winglets and a string of electronics. Shops that still had cameras and glass cases and televisions that only showed me walking past them. Somewhere in me, a part that hadn't learned fear until late made a decision. I would stop trying to be clever, and I would try to be stubborn instead. I would pick a corridor and walk until my feet gave up. I would not turn for footsteps. I would not read directories. I would keep the mirrors to one side, so the blur would have to choose an angle, and I would not give it the satisfaction of seeing my mouth make a scared shape. I took the long hall by the shuttered multiplex. The movie posters were light boxes that contained a childhood I don't own. The soda stand was stocked with cups in sizes that made my teeth itch. The hall kinked left. Wider, emptier, better. The tile here had been buffed to a state of argument. Not good. I stuck to the waxy matte seams between the polished squares. The footsteps matched me. The blur held itself a precise distance behind my shoulder in the edge of things. At the end of the corridor, the mall had built a lake, not water tile, shined mirror perfect, in a circle the size of an event no one would hold anymore. Over it hung a sculpture made of chrome rods. A starburst someone decided was art because it had no job. The chrome was 1,000 tiny mirrors. The floor was a single big one. I had to cross it. I did not. I tried to edge around on the dimmer tiles. The circle was too big to be defied politely. The mall had funneled me here with the same soft hands it used to adjust mannequins. I took one step onto the mirror, and my reflection met me at exact weight. And in the mirror behind me, the blur laid its long hand over my shoulder like blessing. I ran then, because stubbornness is not a shield against evolution. The blur didn't hurry. It didn't need to. Running across the mirror made the world flatter. My breath became frames per second. In the chrome sculpture, the blur came in fragments, an arrangement of wrong. Halfway across, the mall changed the light. It lowered it like a cat flattens before it pounces. The PA clicked, one tone, no message. My reflection did something ahead of me, no, not ahead. Without me, it smiled. I did not. It lifted its hand. Mine was a fist. It stood straighter, shoulders back, as if to be sized. I hunched. The blur behind my reflection reached for the place where my reflection cut the mirror world and gripped the seam. Its fingers too many, too close, hooked under the surface like prying open gift wrap. The mirror did not break. It peeled. The seam made a sound like tape. I stopped. The only rule I had that survived all the other bad ideas: don't help it. Movement helps it. Panic is motion. Begging is a rhythm. I stood, as if the mall had told me to. The blur pushed. It pushed through the mirror the way a person pushes through thick plastic, face-deforming features deciding to be. The face remained undecided. It had weight. That was new. In the chrome above me, 100 little blurs tugged at 100 little seams. I did not step back. The mirror wanted me to. The mall wanted me centered, my reflection and the blur holding me between them like upholstery. I thought of all the doors that had wanted the gentleness of my panic. I thought of the escalator missing a step and continuing anyway. I thought of the fountain coughing the taste of old coins into my mouth. I thought of the house of mirrors exhibit that would happily watch me fold myself into a correct length. "I'm not yours," I said, and the hum ate the words the way ocean eats sentences. The blur stilled. The reflection smiled wider. The tiles beneath my feet felt colder, as if a thermostat had been set lower for closing. I took one step forward. The blur could only pull out if I gave it in. It needed me to back away from my reflection, to widen its seam, and my reflection-obedient thing would oblige. If I walked into it instead, if I took the space it had already given my shape, what then? Maybe nothing. Maybe worse than nothing. I stepped until my toes met my reflected toes. My reflection's smile stayed on my face while mine did not. The blur's hand hovered at the seam where the tiles pretended to be a world. The hand didn't quite enter air. It pressed. It waited. I put my palm to the mirror. Cold. Hard. The exact pressure my palm could afford. No more. On the other side, my reflection laid its palm to mine, and we became a picture I recognized from stores. Two of a thing doing the right amount of tenderness. The blur leaned between our joined hands and had no place to go. We stood like that until the hum realized it was playing for a crowd of none and shifted key. Then I did the smallest thing that I can call brave. I slid my palm upward against the mirror as if pulling a shade. My reflection did too. The blur followed, lifting its non-existent face, giving up its reach to maintain posture, watching where the seam went. When my hand reached as high as it could go, and my arms trembled and something in my shoulder clicked in a way I will hear in whether 20 years from now or never. I took my hand away. The blur didn't fall back through. It hung there, paused at the top of what it could be. I walked off the mirror lake on the line of grout that never gleams. The mall did not scream. Screaming is for things that admit they can lose. It just rearranged itself so that the chrome sculpture appears in the periphery of every wing now. So that my reflection is slightly wrong in every shoe store window. So that the hum sometimes drops to the exact note my bones carry and holds it until I think of lying down. Just for a minute, on a bench that has been waiting for me. I have not escaped. I will not. The doors remain generous liars. The escalators keep running, faithful to their loops. The parking lot breathes in and breathes out and remains a ceiling painted dark. The monster keeps hunting. It does not need to hurry. It walks in my glass when I brush my teeth in a sink that offers lukewarm water and a mirror from an optometrist's hall. It stands in the convex mirror at the corner of every corridor, so I can admire my posture. It moves only when reflections move. It is patient as money. There are no other people. There never were. There never will be. When I dream, the mall supplies a crowd sound, so I will feel better about the echo in my shoes. When I wake, the crowd drips away, and the saxophone returns to its long apology. I do not talk. There is no one to talk to. The PA plays tones. The mannequins listen. The blur taps. I walk. I do not ride twice. I do not eat. I do not look up when pacing happens above me, because there is no second floor until I look. I leave notes for myself that turn to sale signs. I make rules no one can inherit. I sleep in loops. I wake to the smell of pretzels that don't exist, and mop water that remembers lemon. I keep 2 matte tile. I keep my shoulder 2 mirrors like that's the shoulder I can spare. I save my breath for the part where the closing tone arrives, and my name almost fits in the space that follows attention shopper. It doesn't need to hurry. It will walk at my speed forever. I will turn corners into more corners. I will see my back in the glass and the blur behind it. The worst part is not that it will catch me. The worst part is that it doesn't need to. The mall does not end. The reflection never leaves. I cannot starve fast enough to be a surprise. The doors are not doors. The exit is the price. I keep moving. The mannequins keep listening. It keeps its palm against the other side of the glass, entire, patient, waiting for me to give it the small panic it needs to step the rest of the way out. I will not. I will walk until the saxophone learns another wrong song. I will not be sized. I will not try anything clever that smells like hope. I will cross the mirror lake on grout lines until my feet memorize that path and carve it deeper. I will ignore the PA when it pretends to mean me. I will sleep near the knot fountain, and when the scrape comes and pauses by my shoes, I will remind my eyelids how to be walls. I cannot escape it, nose. It taps to the tempo of my steps, kind, unhurried, a courtesy at closing, and I answer by walking, and walking, and walking, until the mall opens again, without ever having closed at all.